right. Looks like we've got a deep dive into evolution on our hands today.
Always exciting stuff.
You know it. Our listeners sent over this clip from Crack, CSRNet, JRF together.
Okay.
It seems like they're prepping for that CSRNet exam and want to really get a grip on these evolutionary giants.
I see.
Lamarck, Darwin, Kimura, right? Those big names, right?
Yep, the cornerstones of evolutionary thought, for sure.
So let's break down their ideas, make sure our listeners are ready to, totally ace that exam.
Sounds good to me. Each one offers a crucial piece to understanding how life has changed over time.
Like assembling an all-star team of thinkers to help us crack this exam.
Exactly.
Love it. So first up, Lamarck.
Lamarck.
Now, his idea about acquired characteristics being passed on, that's a classic.
It is, yeah.
Like the giraffe stretching its neck for those high leaves, and then, boom, offspring inherit a longer neck.
Right. Now, we know that traits acquired during an organism's life aren't directly passed down genetically, but Lamarck's contribution is still super important. He challenged that old idea that species were just fixed, never changing.
Like, shook things up a bit.
Big time. You got to imagine the scientific community back then. This was revolutionary, paved the way for Darwin and others to really start exploring how evolution works.
Wow, that's fascinating. So then Darwin comes along and kind of blows everyone's minds with natural selection.
Right.
Survival of the fittest. I feel like we've all heard that phrase a million times.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Although survival of the fittest doesn't quite capture the whole picture.
It's more nuanced, I guess.
Exactly. Darwin's concept is better described as differential reproduction of genotypes, as your source material points out. Basically, individuals in a population have these slight differences, right?
Right.
And those with traits that give them an edge in their environment, they're more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass those traits on.
Makes sense.
And over many generations. This leads to populations changing, adapting to their environment.
Okay, so it's not just about surviving, but about actually passing on those hopeful genes.
Precisely.
Gotcha. But how does this explain, super complex stuff? Take the human eye, for example. It's so intricate.
Yeah.
How could it have possibly evolved through those gradual changes?
It's a question that even puzzled Darwin himself, but the key is the timescale. We're talking millions of years, vast stretches of time.
Yeah.
Even the tiniest changes, when they build up over that kind of time frame, can lead to incredibly complex structures.
Mm-hmm.
The eye probably started as simple light-sensitive cells, right? And through this series of gradual adaptations, eventually, boom, the human eye.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got Lamarck, we've got Darwin. Now, where does Kimura in his neutral theory come in?
Well, Kimura challenged the assumption that every evolutionary change happens because of natural selection.
Okay.
He proposed that lots of genetic changes, especially at the molecular level, are actually neutral.
Neutral.
Yeah, they don't really affect the organism's survival or ability to reproduce. These neutral mutations can spread through populations randomly through what we call genetic drift.
Wait, so random events can actually shape evolution?
They can, indeed.
That's wild. Can you give me an example of how that works?
Sure. Imagine a population of birds all with different beak shapes.
Right.
Then, say, a big storm hits and wipes out a large chunk of the population. Just by chance, most of the survivors have thicker beaks.
Okay.
Now, this isn't because thick beaks were suddenly better. It was just random luck. But in the next generation, there's going to be way more birds with thick beaks simply because of that chance event.
Gotcha. So not every change we see in a species is because of adaptation or natural selection.
Right.
Some of it is just random. Okay, that's mind-blowing. All right, finally, let's talk about Sewell Wright and genetic drift and those adaptive landscapes he talked about.
All right, so Wright focused on how this random genetic drift can have a huge impact, especially on smaller populations.
Smaller populations specifically.
Yep. Just like with those birds, a small group can experience some pretty big shifts in gene frequencies just because of chance.
So the size of the population really does matter when it comes to how things evolve.
Big time. And Wright came up with this concept of adaptive landscapes to help us visualize how populations evolve.
Adaptive landscapes?
Yeah. Imagine a mountainous landscape. The peaks represent the best possible combinations of genes for a certain environment, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Populations are kind of moving across this landscape, pushed by natural selection and genetic drift, aiming for those peaks of fitness.
That's a pretty cool visual. Okay, so for our listener who's probably scribbling notes like crazy, let's do a quick recap. We've covered 4 major players in evolutionary thought. Lamarck, who brought the idea of species changing, even if his mechanism wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
Then Darwin, with his theory of natural selection, Kimura, who introduced neutral evolution, and finally Wright, who highlighted the role of genetic drift, especially in those smaller populations.
Absolutely. And for that CSI Net exam, I'd say really think about the differences between them. Like, how does Lamarck's view clash with Darwin's?
Right.
And what does Kimura's neutral theory tell us about evolution at the molecular level?
Those are some really good questions to ponder. It's amazing how these ideas all build on each other,
It really is.
giving us this richer picture of how evolution shapes life on Earth.
For sure.
Well, with all this knowledge, I think our listeners are going to be more than ready for that exam. Good luck.
You got this.
And hey, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.
See ya.